Good afternoon, parents. We recently started our geometry unit, and in our geometry unit, we first start the unit by just talking to the kids about what a polygon is and is not. So a polygon is a shape that has 3 or more sides. It needs to have 3 or more vertices. It has to be closed with no curves. So a oval and a circle would not be a polygon because they have curves. They're shapes, but they're not polygons due to the fact that they are curved shapes. So any curved shape or anything that is an open shape would not be a polygon. It has to be closed with no curves. It has to have 3 or more sides and 3 or more vertices. And the sides are basically just the lines of the shape, and then the vertices are the points where the 2 sides meet. So this side and this side meet here, so that would be a vertice. And so that's what the kids are doing. And then after we talk about what a polygon is and is not, then we talk about all the different kinds of 2D shapes, and we go up all the way to a dodecagon, which is a 12-sided shape. So in 3rd grade, we do go up all the way to classifying 12-sided shapes. And so that's what we start with, and we really just teach them to make sure that they're counting their sides and putting that in the box so that they know what kind of shape it is. So there's more shapes than just the ones listed here. All right, and I gave them another notes page where they list all the attributes of the shapes, because in 3rd grade, we're really talking about the attributes that the shapes have. So the attributes of a 12-sided shape would be that it has 12 sides and 12 vertices. I also talk about the prefixes of the words that make up the shapes. So like dodecagon, dodeca means 12, which is why that is a 12-sided shape. All right. When it comes to 3rd grade, we don't necessarily focus on how many sides a shape has and what that name is. In 3rd grade, we actually mostly look into quadrilaterals. And when it comes to quadrilaterals, we have multiple different kinds of quadrilaterals, and we call it a quadrilateral family or a quadrilateral club. So a quadrilateral is just a 4-sided shape. But within the quadrilateral club, or within the 4-sided shape family, there are multiple quadrilaterals, and each of those quadrilaterals in the club have their own attributes. So if you look at the quadrilateral club notes page, which is something that the kids get and they've all been able to use on their quizzes, you have a trapezoid. And the trapezoid is off on its own by itself because the attributes of a trapezoid is that they only have one pair of parallel sides. So only these set of sides are parallel. But these ones would not be parallel, which is why they only have one set of parallel sides. It's the only quadrilateral within the club that will only have one pair of parallel sides, which is why it's off on its own. Then the next one in the quadrilateral club is the parallelogram club. To be in the parallelogram club, the quadrilateral just needs to have 2 pairs of parallel sides. And so looking at this picture, inside the parallelogram club, we also have a rectangle, a square, and a rhombus. The reason they're inside the parallelogram club is because all those shapes, including a parallelogram, have 2 pairs of parallel sides. So this side and this side would be parallel, and this one would be parallel, which is why it would be 2 sets. And the way I have the kids show that it's 2 pairs or 2 sets of parallel sides is to draw a dash through the sets. So this would be set 1. So I do 1 dash through it. And then this would be the second set. So I do 2 dashes through it to show that this side and this side are parallel to each other, and this side and this side are parallel to each other. Great. And then after the parallelogram club, we have the rhombus club. To be in the rhombus club, or the attributes that a rhombus has, is that it has to have 4 congruent sides. Congruent means that it's going to have the exact same side, so it just means same. So what that means is that for a rhombus, if this side is 4 inches, all the sides of the rhombus are going to be 4 inches. But it also falls under the parallelogram club, so it's going to have 2 pairs of parallel sides, and all the sides are going to be congruent and the same length. If you look at the rhombus club, the square also falls under the rhombus club. This is because the square also shares 4 congruent sides, just like the rhombus club does. So a square is going to have 4 congruent sides, meaning all 4 sides of a square are going to be the exact same length as the other sides. Okay? Then we have our rectangle club. To be in the rectangle club, it just needs to have 4 right angles. So a rectangle and a square are both in this club because both the square and the rectangle will have 4 right angles. And the way I ask the kids to show if a shape has 4 right angles is to show this little box in the corner where the angle would be. So this shows that it has 4 right angles. So a rectangle and a square will share that 4 right angle. The way I tell the kids to check to see if something is going to have 4 right angles is if they put a piece of paper, hold on, let me grab a piece of paper. If they put a piece of paper in the corner of the shape, if you can see both of the lines all the way through, then by seeing both of the lines all the way through, it means it's a right corner or a right angle, okay? So both the rectangle and the square will share those right angles. I also call the square our VIS, our very important shape, because our square is the only shape in the quadrilateral club that falls under multiple clubs. So our square is the only one that'll fall under the rhombus club, the rectangle club, and the parallelogram club. And so what that means is that our square is the only shape that's going to have all 4 sides the exact same length, so all 4 sides congruent. It's the only one that's going to have 4 right angles, and it's the only one that's going to have 2 sets of parallel sides. So it's the only one that's going to have all of those attributes with it. So that's what we teach the kids about quadrilaterals. And they have to know these because on their test, they're having to identify if a shape is or is not a quadrilateral, and if it is a quadrilateral, what kind of quadrilateral is it? What attributes does it fall under to make it that certain shape? Okay? After we teach the kids about 2D shapes in the quadrilateral club, then we introduce the 3D shapes. And so when we introduce the 3D shapes, and we also talk all about the attributes that a 3D shape has. So when it comes to the attributes of a 3D shape, 3D shapes will have faces, which are the sides or bases of the shape. You will have the vertices, which are the points of the shape. You will have the edges, which are basically the lines of the shape. And then some shapes will either have a curved surface or not a curved surface. So looking at a sphere, the sphere has 0 faces. It has 0 vertices, because it has no points. It has 0 edges, because it has no lines. And it is a curved surface. So any of the 3D shapes are a curved surface if it can roll when you push it. Then looking at the rectangular prism, for instance, the edges are the lines. So like this is a line of the shape, so it's called the edge. And on a rectangular prism, it would have 12 edges. Versus the vertices are the points where those edges meet. So on the rectangular prism, there would be 8. And then the faces or bases are the actual rectangular parts of the shape. So you would have 6 of them. Because in a shape like this, you have a top, you have a bottom, you have 2 sides, and then you have a back and a front. So there would be 6 faces to the shape. The kids also get this 3D shape bank just so that they can reference it throughout their quizzes and their tests. So it just gives them an idea of like a picture of a shape and how to spell the shape. And then they can look back at this and reference it to look at those attributes. So looking at this, they can then, point all the vertices and say that this one has, 6 vertices. And then they would count all of the lines, which are the edges, and they would say this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 edges. And then they would count the faces of the shape, And they would say, okay, there's one bottom one. I got one on the side. I got another one on the side. So it's 2, 3. And then I have one that would be facing me in the front. So that would be 4. And then I have one that would be facing the back all the way over there. So that would be 5. So it has 5 faces. So it had 6 vertices, 9 edges, and 5 faces. And so the kids can do that for all their shapes so that they already are familiar and know which of their shapes are going to have what attributes. And then they also can look at it and say, oh, well, I know all of these shapes are going to be prisms. I know all of these shapes would be pyramids, and I know all of these shapes would be curved surfaces. So something that all of these shapes have in common is that they're prisms. Something all of these shapes have in common is that they're pyramids, and something all of these shapes have in common are that they have curved surfaces. All right, so now that we've talked about the different 3D shapes and kind of that we look at mostly at the attributes, I'm gonna show y'all a little bit of like the rigor and the way the geometry is worded and tested for STAR, so that you'll have a better idea of what the kids need to know when it comes to geometry. So, for example, this is one of the questions, and it says, which figure cannot be classified as a prism? So the answer would be C, because it's a cylinder, because D, B, and A are all prisms, because a cube does fall under the prism category due to the fact that it has opposite bases that are the same. This one right here says, which list shows a correct way to group these figures? Well, you would look at the answer choices, and the answer would be F, because there is one triangle, and the way that the kids would do this is I expect them to count all the sides and say, okay, well, that has 3, this one has 4, so I know it's a quadrilateral. They would say this one has 5, so I know it's a pentagon. This one has 4, so I know it's a quadrilateral, and this one also has 4, so I know it's a quadrilateral. So then they can say, okay, well, yes, I have one triangle. I have 1, 2, 3 quadrilaterals. Oh, and I have one pentagon. Oh, I have check marks for all those, so that might be my answer. And then I still expect them to type G, H, and J, and when they checked them, they would see, oh, this one left out pentagon, so I know this one's not right. Then H, they would say hexagon. Well, we didn't have a hexagon, so I know it's not H. And then they would say, wait, we had more than 2 quadrilaterals. We had 3, so it's not J, and I would know my answer was F. So that's how I expect the kids to show their work with this, and that's one of the questions that could be on their test. Another one is, it's the same thing, but it's 3D shapes. How would the kids list them based on the 3D shapes and what they are? Here's another one, and it asks them for which of the statements is true based on how they grouped the shapes. Okay, so the shape has all sides that are congruent. It has 4 sides, so I know already that it's going to be a quadrilateral, and I know it's either going to be a square or a rhombus because of the fact that all of the sides have to be congruent. And it being a polygon only tells me that it's a shape. So really the most 2 important keys were right here were this one and this one, letting me know it's going to be a quadrilateral and that it was going to either be a square or a rhombus based on the fact that all the sides would be congruent. So then using that information, the kids would have to figure out which statement could be true. Here's another one, and we do a lot of this kind of practice in class with the kids. So it's a figure that's divided into 7, and then they have to tell me how many are quadrilaterals or which sections are quadrilaterals. And we already do a lot of practice in class like this. And so for this one, they would say that section 5 and 6 were quadrilaterals, and they would still do the same thing. They would go through and they would count all of them and put a 4 in the shapes that had 4 so that they know those are quadrilaterals. This one would have 3, so they would put 3 in it. And so that's what I expect for this, so that they know that, oh, only 5 and 6 had 4 sides, so only those 2 would be quadrilaterals. Another one, and we practice this one as well with them in class, but another one is he grouped the figures together based on different attributes, and now which statement could be true based on how he sorted them. Well, I know looking at group X, he sorted them because all those figures have curved surfaces. And then I know looking at group Y,